Bookworms, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. So today's video is my November wrap up. Spoiler alert, there's not that many books being read for this month, so with further ado, let's get straight into the video and see what I have read. So for November I read 11 books. 2 of the books are on my Kindle. However, one of the books wasn't DNF, but I'm still counting it as I did read quite a substantial amount of this book. I just couldn't finish it because it really was boring. And to start it off, it was In the Nightwood by Dale Bailey. This is, yeah, I got up to page 125, chapter 35, so I literally just had this much left, but I was getting so bored of it. I felt like the synopsis was nothing like what I was actually reading. Like, the synopsis sounded really good, but what I was reading, I was like, where's all of this stuff that's been mentioned in the synopsis? Where is it in this book? Like, I kind of feel like it probably would have been like the last maybe 10 pages of this book probably. But it was taking me forever to read this. It was 214 pages. This would take me like, a couple of hours a day at the most if I've got things to do. And it was just taking me forever. Like, I got to where I was and I was nearly at the end of day 2 and I was just like, do you know what? No, I don't want to pick it up. I'm getting extremely bored. At one point I fell asleep while reading. That was how boring it was. And if I'm going to be totally honest, I wasn't vibing with either of the characters. Like, we mainly focus on Charles Hayden, but we also sort of have his wife Erin as well. They obviously are mourning their daughter's loss, but it was just how it was done, mourning wise, I felt was not very nice. Like, the mother Erin, she's obviously mourning big time. I kind of feel like most mothers will, because we're the ones who carry the children for 9 months. We're the ones who've got that deep connection and that bond, compared to where the males don't, no offense. And I just felt like Charles was really fed up of her being the way she was, and I was just like, hold on mate, actually she should be mourning, so should you, why aren't you? And like, it was implied that something happened. Charles and Erin's daughter was obviously in the care with Charles, and something happened. I don't know whether this book reveals it or not. It was probably one of the things that made me maybe push finishing it to see what happened to the daughter, but I don't overly think it would have said anyway. But there was sort of implying that it was Charles to blame. It was also implying that Charles had an affair, and he was sort of starting a new one. And it was boring. Like, it's meant to focus on this fairy tale that Erin's ancestor wrote, called In the Nightwood, which is something Charles has been obsessed with since he was a kid. And Erin gets left the house that In the Nightwood was based in, and so they go to move there, and basically it's supposed to be haunting sites. Like, they actually find the truth of how In the Nightwood was written, and it was actually based on real life events of Erin's ancestor. But I wasn't getting any of that. From what I had read, I still wasn't getting any of that. It was just boring. It was just Charles being mean to his wife, so I just gave up. So that was a DNF. However, I did read the rest of these books, and I have some surprising ones. This first one being a big surprise. So this is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is my book club pick. And I wasn't sure how I was going to vibe with this book. It sounded really good, and I'm glad it was the winning book in our poll, but I must admit I was quite apprehensive of this book. I was like, oh, am I going to enjoy it? The only reason why I was apprehensive is because it is very focused on Shakespeare plays, and on Shakespeare texts. And I was like, okay, I don't like Shakespeare. I never understood it at school. Apart from Macbeth, that was like spoken about in this, I didn't do any of the other Shakespeare stuff that was mentioned here. And it was sort of like, this is going to fly over my head, which it did. Like, I won't lie, the Shakespeare parts, the Shakespeare like quotes that they did went from, I didn't understand it, and it was sort of like, ugh, come on, I don't want to read that. My personal preference. Like, other people probably really enjoyed it, but for me, it wasn't something I understand or particularly enjoy. So that sense, I was like, ugh. And there was obviously a lot of reference in that, because this story focuses on students in this university who are studying Shakespeare, and they're like theatre majors and stuff like that. So that was one bit that made me not enjoy the book. The second bit, there was a couple of parts in this book that I generally thought was not necessary. Like, I sort of thought at first, oh, it's being mentioned because something's going to happen, but it never happens. And I was like, well, why was that in there? That was like, we could have not had that. That was a pointless bit of text and unnecessary. And I was just like, it sort of made the pace just slow down a bit, because I was like, well, when you like carry on reading, like, well, it's not going back about it, it's not talking about it, why mention it in the first place if you're not doing anything about it? So that annoyed me a bit. And nasty, which is the bit that really knocked this book down for me, was I did guess the whodunit. So basically the story is, we meet Oliver Marks, who has served 10 years for the murder of one of his university friends. However, it's a murder he may or may not have committed. On the day he's released, he's greeted by the detective who put him in prison, and the detective is retiring, but before he does, he wants to know what really happened 10 years ago. He wants to know the truth, because he's constantly in the back of his mind thinking, did he actually do it, or was he covering for someone else? He wanted the truth, and obviously Oliver didn't want to tell the truth, because obviously he was in the police and all that, but because he's retired, he's no longer in the police force, he agreed to tell his story, but he wanted to tell his story the way he wanted it to, which was pretty much involving Shakespeare and text and stuff like that. And so the start of the book, we basically just follow, it's all Oliver's accounts, but the start, there's like sort of 4 parts I would say. Well, 4th part being an epilogue, but like the first part is sort of the background of Oliver, background of the university, where he's studying Shakespeare, and he's obviously in his 4th year, and there are only 7 students left in the 4th year who are like successful in their like the theatres and all that. So they've become really, really good friends. We've got Oliver, we've got Richard, we've got James, we've got Alexander, we've got Meredith, we've got Ren, and we've got Filipina, or otherwise known as Pip. So they're all close friends, but they are really close. But then basically this particular play happens, and Richard gets a bit peeved off that he didn't get the starring role, because he's the one with the actor and director parents, he's the good looking one and all of that, but he doesn't get a starring role, and like he's sort of he gets the starring role, but he's the starring role where he gets killed, and he didn't like that. He wanted the one with more speaking parts and all of that kind of thing. He got very jealous, and he started getting extremely abusive and mean, and everyone was getting sick of him. And you sort of see all that aspect, and see Richard becoming meaner and meaner and meaner, and then all of a sudden one big rap party because it just finished their last play of the year, and Richard gets really peeved off because the lads, so Oliver, James and Alexander, they decided to show Richard a lesson while they're in the play and decided to properly beat him up in the scene rather than pretend. So Richard got really, really peeved off, and basically he starts a fight with all of them. He was on an on-off relationship with Meredith, and he actually hurt Meredith, and Oliver got in the way and was like, whoa mate, you're going too far. Richard hurt Ren, which Ren is his cousin. He flew her across the garden and all that. So Richard's starting to go off the handles, and then all of a sudden he's turned up dead. And basically you then sort of have that bit of who did it, because it's clear Richard, it wasn't a suicide, it was clear it wasn't an accident, it was clear that he was murdered. And so we then obviously know, because of the beginning of the book, that Oliver was done for Richard's murder. But obviously we get into the book to find out whether he did or whether it was a cover. Now it was a cover, I'm not going to tell you who it was, but I expected it. I got halfway and I was just like, right, I think it's so and so. And as I was reading, as I believed it was, I was sort of waiting for the twist. So it did get revealed right at the end, but obviously it ended up being that person's no longer alive. They committed suicide because they couldn't carry the guilt of having someone they cared about take the fall. So that for me knocked a rating off, because I don't particularly like it when I guess who done it quite early on in the book. Like, I don't mind it if it's near the end, but you know, I got halfway through, I had an inkling I was right, and I was just like, ugh. So I've given this 4 stars, but it did surprise me because I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. Like, you know, apart from a few little bits and bobs, you know, I flew through this book really quickly. It was really enjoyable. I absolutely love Oliver as a character. Like, I really felt bad for him, and like the only character I really wasn't keen on particularly was Richard. The rest of them, they were all lovely, but like the character building was brilliant, because at the start you really get invested in all of their characters, you like them, and then slowly you start really hating Richard because of what he's doing. And Rio, that's how she sort of wrote it. I think she wanted to slowly get you to go through all of the characters' emotions, specifically Oliver. I really like the theatre stuff and the drama of the theatre. I just really wasn't keen on the Shakespeare, but that was just my preference. Next, I read Nothing But Black and Tea by Cassandra Khaw. So I gave this 3.5 stars. I had high hopes for this book. I really thought I was going to love it. It gave me Rin Chapecko's The Girl from the Well series, or duology vibes, just by, you know, it was a Japanese ghost, it's Japanese folklore, Japanese haunted place, but I did not like any of the characters. Like, we mainly focus on Kat, who joins her old friends who are searching for a perfect wedding venue for these two couple, and the bride-to-be wants to get married in a haunted house, mansion, whatever. And so one of Kat's friends, Philip, I think he was called. Yeah, Philip, I think. He's very rich, so he managed to find this particular Heian era manor in Japan, and so they stay there for like a celebratory sort of dinner and party for the bride to be and the husband to be. And you meet a ghost bride who basically hundreds of years ago, she was meant to get married in this manor, but her husband never turned up, and she found out that her husband died on the way to a wedding. He died from a heart attack, and they made a promise that, you know, they would always be together. So she told her family to bury her alive in the manor so that her husband-to-be would come back to her. But obviously that happened. She obviously dies, you know, she got buried alive, she dies. But every year they do a sacrifice and will bury someone alive with her, so she's not alone. And so it's like a constant thing. So Kat, I don't know what her deal is, but it's clear that this group of friends obviously quite like ghosts. Like I wouldn't say they're not ghost investigators, but I think they really like ghosts and believe in it. So Kat sees her and she's like, okay, something's gonna go down. There was a ton of ghosts. Like we've got the ghost bride, which is this creepy lovely woman, and then we have all of the sacrifices who were buried alive there. So there was like thousands of ghosts and nothing happened. Like nothing happened. All that happened is it looked like one might have got possessed, but you don't know, and one of the other characters disappeared and was like trapped in like underground and she couldn't get out, and then she did. It was basically they ended up doing a sacrifice, so one of the characters killed Philip, and because he was a sacrifice they were let out. But there was no spookiness, there was not really much ghost action there, and I was really expecting that. I was like, oh, okay. So this was a letdown to me. I gave it 3.5 stars because of the writing. The writing was exceptional. Like it was wonderful, lyrical, poetic writing. I can't fault that. Didn't like the characters. Could have done with more spooky ghost stuff. And, you know, the ending was not overly brilliant either. So that was a bit of a disappointment. But a surprise, I read Fawn Hill by Pam Smythe, and this wasn't on my TBR, I don't think. I can't overly remember. I don't think it was. I just remember going into the library and I saw this, and this was actually recently on my radar for someone who mentioned it on BookTube. I can't remember who it was. But I put it on my wish list thinking, oh, I'll treat myself to it one day. But I saw it in the library and I thought, oh, this is a sign. I'm going to get it. And I read it, and this is brilliant. 5 stars. It focuses on bullying, it focuses on abuse, it also focuses on how the social services, social worker system is pants. Even, you know, so we're sort of follow 2 characters. We follow 2 Marys. Mary from 1982. Am I correct? Yeah, 1982, and then Mary from 2017. So Mary in 2017 is just the actual illustrations, the graphics. Mary from 1982 was diary entries. Hang on, let me actually get the diary entry. It's diary entries. So in 2017, Mary moves into this house, and right opposite the house is Fawn Hill House of Girls, which is girls who are there being fostered and waiting to get adopted. And so Mary from 2017 sees a girl in the window, and so she wants to make friends because she's just recently moved. Her mum's passed away. It's just her and her dad. Her dad's never home, so she's quite lonely. So she starts like trying to get in contact with this girl, but every time she sees her, she like runs off. Now, I must admit, when I read Mary from 1982, I thought, hold on, something must have happened to her, because there's no way this same girl in 2017 would be that same age. Like, they were both the same age. I thought, no, she would be a lot older. So it was clear that this other Mary is a ghost that she can see, but it was also like how, why, what happened sort of thing. So Mary from 1982 basically lives in Fawn Hill. She's getting horrendously bullied by this girl. We do not know her name. It never tells you the name. And basically, right at the end, she decides that she's going to try and kill the girl and make it look like an accident, because the Fawn Hill was going up for sale, and Mary and the girl that was bullying her were going to be put to a different girls' home together. And she did not want to, like, you know, she's not sleeping, she's not eating, you know, she's not happy. But it backfires because the girl pretends that she's really sorry and gave her this sob story, and so she believed her, and then this girl threw her down in the basement, locked her there, and ran off and escaped and like went and did her own thing. And so then Mary decides she doesn't want to leave Fawn Hill, she doesn't want to go anywhere else, so she commits suicide, and that's how she dies. But the end of this book, both Marys find each other, and a storm happens, and Fawn Hill goes up in flames, and Mary from 2017 is dead. And then we literally are left with right at the end, there is a boy who we don't know his name, but a boy obviously is in this new girl's house. And hang on, have I just said her name wrong? Okay, you know I said both Marys, they're not both Marys. So Mary was 1982 girl, Ella is a 2017 girl. I don't know why I thought she was called Mary as well. Oh, that was embarrassing. But yeah, basically what the house that Ella lived in is now been sold to another family. It's a little boy, and the little boy finds both Mary and Ella in Fawn Hill House. So it's clear that Fawn Hill House is quite haunted. It's clear that Mary is trying to get as many friends as she can to make a family because she's lonely. But it's just, this was quite triggering for me with the bullying, because I have been bullied quite badly myself. So it was triggering for me, but I really liked the representation, and as much as it was upsetting, it was just so emotional and beautiful, and the imagery and everything, it was just amazing. So I am going to treat myself to this actual physical copy, because obviously it's a library, it needs to go back, and I'm going to treat myself to the other book, because I noticed there was a second book which obviously follows the boy and all that, so I'm wondering whether it's a graphic novel series or something. But it's amazing, it's absolutely wonderful, and yeah, if you haven't, definitely put this on your radar. It is brilliant. This was another surprising book, but it's certainly a favourite graphic novel of the year. So 5 stars, definitely. Next up, I read Empire of Dragons by Rachel L. Shade. This is the Cursed Empire Book 1. So this is actually for a tour. I completely forgot about this particular tour because it's all on Facebook, and I very rarely go on Facebook. And I muted the Instagram chat. It's only because I got tagged to say that the tour was ending that I was like, oh poo, I haven't read this. And because originally when I was on tour for this, I actually bought a physical copy because it's beautiful, even underneath the dust jacket. And I was like, no, as much as I got gifted the ebook, I just wanted the physical copy because it was beautiful. So I ended up reading it because it was far too late to tell them that I was no longer doing tours. I'm really glad that I did read this because this was fantastic. I gave it 4 stars. The only reason it didn't get 5 stars was there wasn't enough fantasy for me. It's very more political, very more war against each other. And like the fantasy magic side of things was more from like gods and goddesses rather than actual they have magic. It was more they got the magic from these gods and goddesses, like this sort of thing. So that was my only reason it didn't get the 5 stars, because I wanted more fantasy, I wanted more magic, and I wanted like a bit more of that. However, it is a series, so I'm wondering whether the next book it will get a bit more magical and more fantasy, because this sort of sets the scene and everything. I think the second book it's sort of hopefully, but regardless of that, like this is a perfect book for people who want to get into fantasy, because there's not much in there that will confuse you. Like it's very simple, it's very easy to get, and there's not much of it. So I definitely recommend this book for people who are wanting to get into it. But the characters are brilliant. There's a little bit of a slow burn romance, which I'm curious to see if it continues in book 2 or not, because both the love interests completely break the girl's heart sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see whether they do have a relationship or whether they become enemies again. But I absolutely loved our two characters. So we follow Lulani, and then we follow Juliana. I'm not going to go into this because there's a lot of spoilers, but it's brilliant. I wanted more fantasy, but other than that, I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I'm glad that I actually did read this. And then next, I'm going to go with Kingdom of the Curse by Carrie Mazzucato. I think we all know this was a 5-star from me. Now, I will be honest, this wasn't as good as Kingdom of the Wicked, in my opinion. I loved Kingdom of the Wicked because of the mystery thriller that was going on, and also I felt there was more witchcraft with Emilia and just the sort of stuff between her and Raph. This, to me, was more steamy romance, which I want, because obviously we knew there was something going on between Raph and Emilia, and I was like, oh, you know, I want to see that, and we certainly see that. Like, it's steamy as hell, and I want Raph. I want a Raph in my life. I do. So with that sense, it wasn't as good to me as Kingdom of the Wicked, because Kingdom of the Wicked, I loved the Italian references, the Italian food, like all of the like the culture of Italy that she was in. I really liked Emilia's witchcraft, like all of the stuff she did, and I obviously liked the murder mystery was going on. In Kingdom of the Curse, she's obviously gone to hell. She's supposedly engaged to Prince of Hell, which is Pride, like, you know, the actual like devil, which is supposedly Pride. So in the sense of hell, I absolutely loved the description of hell in this. This is like my kind of book that I think described hell to how I would imagine it. And obviously I loved the sort of enemies to lovers romance with Raph and Emilia. I just loved it. And obviously there's like the revenge bit of her wanting to find out what happened to her sister Victoria, but then obviously a massive big plot twist came, and I was not expecting that, which really does open up the third book of, oh, okay, you know, yeah. I've done a vlog which I'll tag in before. This vlog has spoilers, so I've done a timestamp, sorry, of when I do a spoiler, so it's a non-spoiler vlog until the last couple of bits, and then it's spoilery. So if you do want to see my full thoughts of this, then check that video out. Just be mindful where the spoiler part is if you don't want it to spoil to you. But yeah, as much as it wasn't as brilliant as Kingdom of the Wicked and what I liked of that, I still love this purely because Emilia and Raph are steamy as hell, and the plot twist in it was shocking. It was shocking. And the last 3 books physically to share with you are these 3, which are the books that I was reading for Game of Tomes readathon. I managed to complete the readathon with like over a week to spare, so I was pretty chuffed with myself because I've completed 2 readathons, and that was like with a push. This, I like smashed it in a couple of days, so I was very happy. So first up, I read Rapsodic by Laura Thalassa. I think that's how you say it. I can't, yeah. Which is the first book in the Bargainist series, and this book was for the prompt, which was a group prompt for everyone. It was Crossroads Inn, which was basically read a anticipated book, which this is. I've wanted to buy this book for ages, but this was the cheapest paperback. Book 2 and book 3 are like just under £11. This was just under £9. But I was like, as much as I wanted to read it, it was a lot of money for a paperback, and it was still quite a lot of money to get a Kindle version as well. And I was just like, ugh. But I ended up treating myself to this because obviously October was a very hard month for me, and I was like, do you know what? No, I really want it. And I'm so glad I finally owned it because this was excellent. 5 stars, brilliant. From the first page, I was hooked. like I ended up like highlighting some bits and I didn't want to tab it because tabbing books take me forever to read, but literally the first paragraph was, "There's blood on my hands, blood between my toes, blood speckled in my hair. It splashed across my chest, and to my horror I can taste a few droplets on my lips." Like, come on, how can you not enjoy this book with that opening scene? And it continued to be that. Obviously we've got some romance, we've obviously got a mystery going on as well, we've got fantasy elements, we've got fae. Oh, you know I love a fae king, so yes. We've got supernatural elements as well, because our main character Callie is a siren, but she's obviously got a friend who was a witch. Her boyfriend, now ex-boyfriend, was a werewolf. So we got supernatural elements as well. Everything I love in fantasy and supernatural was in this book, and it sort of left this book on a way that if you didn't want to continue the series, it ended in a way where it ended okay, like, you know. But it also, if you're invested in this book and the characters like I was, it leaves you wanting more. So I have got book 2 and 3. I haven't read it. I didn't have time to read it this month because my reading kind of went downhill. I had a bit of a burnout. So I really do want to read book 2 and 3 because I love this so much. So I'm going to try and squeeze it in my December TBR, but my December TBR is massive. So if I don't read it then, I will certainly read it in January. But yeah, absolutely worth the wait. This was brilliant. Love it. I love the Barkener. I love Callie. I love the romance. I love the plot twist. And yeah, if you haven't read it, read it. Next, I read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. So Rapsodic was the group prompt. It was like most anticipated books. Everyone had the same prompt, but obviously different books to whatever your anticipated thing. But from then on, I was on the stuck path, and so I had 2 separate prompts. So Ninth House was for the prompt, read a book with a 2-word title. So I wanted to read this because I had started this last year, but I never finished it because I wasn't quite into it. So I finally read it. I gave this 3.5 stars. Yeah, I gave this 3.5 stars. It was alright. It wasn't exceptional, and I did feel it dragged quite a bit. Like, I will be honest, like the last third of the book really picked up for me, and I really enjoyed it. And certainly like the ending of this book, I was like, ooh. And I thought this was just like a one book, but actually it is. I don't know whether it's a duology or a series, but there is another book, but I don't think it's out yet, or like I don't know if it's got a release date yet, but I know there's another book. But the plot twist at the end and the cliffhanger, I was like, okay, yeah. So as much as it wasn't a fantastic read for me, I did enjoy it, and I certainly want to pick up the other book because I need to know what happened. But yeah, I'm glad I actually finally did read it, because it was going to be a book that I probably was going to unhaul, and I'm glad I didn't because I did enjoy most of it. Like, the supernatural side of things was amazing. There was just some slow parts that I thought, did we really need that? But yeah, I'm very interested on what book 2 will be like when it comes. Actual Game of Thrones books, I did do a vlog of that as well, so I'll tag the vlog video down below so you can see my full thoughts on the books. And lastly for that, I read The Haunting Season, Ghostly Tales for Long Winter Nights, which is by many best-selling authors. So this was for the prompt, read a book in a winter setting. Obviously this book had to do with winter nights and all that. It definitely had the winter setting. This was a disappointment though. I gave it 3 stars. So out of the 8 books, there was 4 or 5 that I did like, but I kind of was expecting more ghostly, haunting tales, and I didn't get that. And considering what the title said, to me it was more gothic rather than haunting and like spooky. Like it said ghost tales, I was expecting like ghostly haunted houses or ghosts haunting people and things like that, and no, some of it was like weird voodoo stuff, some of it was, yeah, like the 4 or 5, I think it was 5 books that I liked, they were good, but I wouldn't say they were exceptional. Like this was a disappointment. I was really expecting this to really give me the ghostly vibes that this sort of sounded like it was going to give me, but to me it was more gothic-y rather than haunting. So yeah, that got 3 stars. And then we're on to my 2 books on the Kindle. So one of the books I have read, the other book, which is the last book I'm going to talk about, I'm still reading. Like I've only just started it, but I'm already getting 4 5-star vibes. But the first one I talked about is Ignited by Him by Kylie Kent. This is the 4th book in the Merge series, which if you've been on my channel, you would have heard me talk about. So I'm on her art team, and basically she gets a new book out. If you're interested, you sign up. In majority of the time you get the arc. Now I will be honest, Ignited by Him was a disappointment for me. I gave it 3.5 stars. I love the Merge series books. Book 1, 2 and 3 were 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. This one felt really problematic to me. Like I really did not like the 2 characters' dynamic or their relationship. Like it, to me, was not healthy. It was controlling, it was possessive, it just, yeah, I wasn't keen on it, for me personally. I also was very confused at the start. So we basically follow Ash and Brianna, and in the Merge series all of the characters are interlinked. So the first book, I cannot remember what the title was called, but the first book follows Zach and Lisa. They fall in love, blah blah blah, and Zach owns a club called the Merge Club in Australia. But along that, Zach's got a brother called Bray and a sister called Ella. Now Zach's the oldest, so he looks after his brother and sister because their parents got killed in a vehicle accident. I don't know whether it was a car crash or a train crash, I can't remember, but they got killed, so Zach was the one who looked after them. So the first book is about Zach and Lisa and how their relationship and obviously what happens, but in that you also meet Lisa's best friend Riley, who meets Bray. They have sort of a one-night stand, but they obviously like each other, but she's been hurt in the past, so she doesn't like committing in relationships. And then that pretty much opens up for the second book, which is about Bray and Riley. And in both book 1 and book 2, we obviously meet Ella. There's obviously something going on with Ella and Dean. Now Dean is Zach's best friend and also like second in command in the Merge Club, and he basically, Dean sort of always liked Ella, but it was sort of forbidden because obviously she's Zach's sister, Zach and Bray's sister, and it's sort of like, oh no, like they will kill me and blah blah blah. So book 3 then opens up on their relationship and what happened. I absolutely loved book 3, Dean and Ella's story, because it was completely different in the sense that in the first 2 books they were pretty much, they fancied each other and they ended up going in a relationship. Dean and Ella's story was something happened and Dean sort of left Ella for like reasonable reasons, but it broke her heart and she sort of didn't want to trust him, but they sort of get drawn together and they end up starting to sort of rekindle their friendship, which then turns into relationship, and then obviously they properly get together. So I like theirs because it also talked about sexual assault, and it was done, it was sexual assault, but I think it was also to do with self-harming, Like, it had a really, really good mental health rep in that one. And I just liked their dynamic. Like, it was proper. It wasn't, to me, a possessive relationship or a controlling relationship. Like, in the other two books, it was, you're mine, blah, blah, blah. Like, this one was, to me, more of a relationship. So in Ignited by Him, we follow two characters that have never been mentioned in the previous 3 books. And I got confused. I genuinely thought that maybe I had missed a book. So I went and looked up to see, and no, this was like book 4. So it followed after Dean and Ella's story. And I was like, well, who are they? And then as I was reading it, it was talking about these two characters' parents. And I went, oh. So, spoiler alert, but, you know, basically, Zach and Lisa, in the epilogue of their story, they had a child. They had a baby boy. And then in book 2 with Brain Riley, Zach and Lisa had 2 twins. They were pregnant again and she had twins. And Riley had twins as well in the epilogue of their story. So Zach's eldest was called Ash, which is who this character was. Brianna is Ash's cousin's cousin. So she's not related to him, but they're obviously thing. Now, Brianna's parents, they aren't any of the actual main characters from the previous books. So I don't know who they are, whether they're from a different series and they sort of overlap or not, I'm not sure. So it took me a while to really get that. And when I finally got it, I was like, that was so obvious. Why did you not realise? It was just, I think, done, how it was written wasn't done really well, in my opinion. And then my main problem was, basically, I'm not against a age gap at all. However, I didn't like how Ash was. So basically, Ash met Brianna when he was 8 years old. He was smitten with her as a baby, and then it just, as she got older, it became more than just, oh, she's cute. It was, oh, I think I'm in love with her. She hit 16 and he's like, yeah, I'm in love with her. She's forbidden. Like, you know, she's 16. She's a kid. So he starts not bothering to see his family because she's always there and like making it easy for himself. And then she's hit 21, 22. I think there's 6 or 8 years difference between them or something like that. So she's obviously an adult. She's not, you know, he can go there. And basically, Brianna's father is like a big, massive mafia thug sort of thing. And she goes and gambles. She cheats in gambling and gets all this money. And she doesn't keep it for herself. She gives it to charity. But she decides to go to the Merge Club, which is now Ash's club because he's obviously taken over the business. And the Merge Club has been expanded to different areas of Australia. So Ash was in Perth dealing with stuff there. And Brianna went to the main club, that like the first ever Merge Club, to go to his side business, which was underground gambling, and try and cheat money. And obviously his second in command, I've forgotten his name, rung him to say she's here. He basically gets the quickest flight and gets to Sydney in like record timing, which I was like, yeah, that doesn't happen. And he basically tells her no way, and like she's obviously gambled money, and for her to pay him back, it wasn't by like money, it was sex. And then it's sort of, it obviously comes clear that they both fancy each other, they both like each other, but they both didn't go there because neither of them thought they liked each other. So obviously a relationship forms, but it's just not a healthy one in my opinion. Ash is very possessive. It's you're mine, no one else's. He constantly had to claim her. He wouldn't let her hang around with her boy best mate. And I was just like, I'm not sure. And then Brianna, because of like her family and like her dad's mafia, they are killers and stuff like that, she's quite trigger happy and all that. I wasn't keen on their dynamic. I also saw the plot twist that was coming because I'm so used to the similar plot twists in the other books. I saw it happening before it happened, which was a bit of a down bit because it was sort of a repeat from previous plot twists in the other books, and I was just like, come on, make it a bit original. Like, this is starting to get really copycatty, samey. So yeah, it was a disappointment for me, and which is shocking because obviously I love the series. Like, there are flaws in the series, I'm not gonna lie, but they were easy, fun, steamy reads. But this one, I was just like, yeah, I'm not really keen on them, and I just felt their relationship was possessive and very controlling, and not in a good way. Like, it wasn't in a sexual way, it was a claiming sort of way, in my opinion. Lastly, that I am currently reading, I have just started it, but the first 2 chapters I'm already wowed by, so I'm sort of thinking it's going to be a 4 or 5 star. That's Falling for My Boss's Brother by Tara Brent. This is like a series, but I don't really think they're fully in order because I'm not sure whether this is like book 2 or book 3 or whatever, but it sort of follows a similar sort of theme of forbidden romance sort of thing, but I'm really enjoying it so far. Editing me will put there what my actual rating once I finish it is, but yeah, so far the 2 chapters I've read, I'm really loving. Like, both characters are really interesting and I really like them, so yeah, that's it. So a bit of a up and down month. Like, I've read 10 books, obviously one was a DNF. I think my actual top favourite is Fawn Hill. I think for this month it is this. Like, I just keep constantly going back to everything about this book. Like, I haven't forgotten it. I think that is my top favourite. And then Rapsodic, just because that was just brilliant. But yeah, let me know if you read any of these books, or if you fancy reading any of these books and want to know a bit more. Check out my blog videos for my opinions on Kingdom of the Cursed and also the Game of Thrones books. And yeah, thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.